You are listening to the Fringe Radio Network. FringeRadioNetwork.com.
You're listening to Earth Oddity, a weekly odyssey into all the oddity planet Earth has to offer. And now, serving it up are Christopher Tiny Sullivan and John Long.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Earth Oddity Podcast. I am Tiny, and I am the only one here right now to draw back the curtain and let y'all in on what's going on. My co-host John Long went camping this weekend, and for the rest of the week, I am working 3 to 11. So unfortunately, there was no time for us to record this week. Super sorry about that. We will be back next week with your normally scheduled podcast. But in the meantime, I didn't want to leave y'all with absolutely nothing. So this being October, the spookiest month of the year, we reached out and did an interview with Amanda Sparrow Large. Now, for those of you who that name doesn't ring a bell, she is the lady in Ireland who married the ghost that we talked about on this show way back early on. I tend to be a bit of a skeptic, but that said, I do not know Amanda's experience, and I was not there. I cannot tell her what did or didn't happen to her. And she tells an excellent story. So now Mrs. Amanda tells an amazing story. It's extremely interesting, and I am going to let her speak for herself. So without further ado, I give you Mrs. Amanda Sparrow Large.
We do a podcast, and it's called Earth Oddity, and it's basically just me and my buddy John. We talk about odd news stories from all over the globe, and we came across your story about being married to a pirate way back. I mean, like, you know, over a year ago, right, when we first started talking and doing this podcast. And I don't know, it just, the other day, I don't know why, I was thinking about it, and I thought, you know what, I wonder if she's on Facebook. And then I saw you was on Facebook, and so I decided to just message you, take a shot in the dark and see if you might like to come on and talk about it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's been all over the world at this point. I suppose you know what's all over now, the marriage.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. We did see that. We actually did an update on your story where you had talked about people need to be careful when they right when they dabble in spirit communication, I guess, or whatever. But basically, we just want to get the whole story. We would love to. Just so you know, up front, I'm a Christian, so I guess that's kind of my bias. But that said, I'm open-minded, and I don't know what your experience is. I would love to just get your experience and for you to share your story.
Well, in a way, you being a Christian probably is maybe, better than kind of some interviews I've done with atheists who don't believe anything, because as a Christian,
okay,
you do know that there are negative and demonic entities out there. So, so maybe, you're maybe coming at it from a more open point of view than, we'll say, somebody who is atheist and doesn't believe that there's anything out there at all.
Right.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Yeah, because we obviously believe that I tend to be skeptical of things, but that said, I do believe that there is an unseen spiritual realm. So I guess just to start off, like, how did you meet this guy?
Well, I suppose I grew up as a Christian as well, and I would have had quite a strong faith when I was younger, up until I was in my teenage years. And then I, went off and did my own thing. And I didn't really ever stop believing. It's just not something that was part of my life really after that. And I just didn't think much about what I believed at all, right up until 2010. And in 2010, my son died aged 3 months old.
Oh, sorry.
At that point, then it made me reevaluate, because a lot of people said different things to me. Oh, he's an angel, or, he's in Jesus' arms. And then other people said, that they didn't really believe that there was anything, after death. So
Right.
that's when I decided I really wanted to explore the whole subject and see what I did or didn't believe. So I did research quite a different, a different amount of world religions, and that's how I first came across, we'll say, spirituality, call it New Age, call it the occult, call it whatever you want. I mean, pretty much it's the same thing under a lot of different labels. So the whole idea of energy, we have a soul or a spirit, and that leaves our body when we die. This made perfect sense to me, because when I saw his body, a few hours after he had died, it just didn't feel the same. It didn't feel like it was my child. It just looked like an empty shell. So this resonated with me, that, that this energy that we have about us is what makes us unique and what makes us feel like us, So that made a lot of sense to me. The fact that, scientifically energy can't be created or destroyed. It just changes form or moves. That also was the only kind of thing that logically made sense to me. So I suppose the whole idea of being able to communicate with spirits that passed on really appealed to me, because he had died suddenly. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye or anything. So the fact that potentially I could communicate with him again, from beyond the grave, was really why I got into it in the very beginning. So I started to do workshops, and I didn't really want to go to a medium and have somebody else read for me, because I wouldn't have really believed it if it was somebody else that did it. Because like that, a lot of people think that I'm very illogical and, that I'm kind of all out there because of what I did. But I'm actually quite a sensible and logical person. So if I'd gone to a medium and she had said, oh, your son this, that, or the other, I wouldn't have believed it. So I had to do this for myself. So I started to learn how to do mediumship, and I got very much drawn into that whole thing. So it kind of started off with doing workshops, and then, I joined a circle, and they were doing like Ouija board type stuff and witchcraft stuff. And I got very much drawn into it that way. And I did have the experience of the energy of my son just once, a few months after I started doing this. So fast forward, I suppose, about 5 years, really. I practiced this, on a regular basis, but not every day. I had my life, I had my job, I had another baby. So, it wasn't something that I was all consuming. It was just the same as religion is to most people. It's something that's there as part of your life, but not something that you do like all the time. So the first experience I had with the entity that I ended up marrying was in 2015. I was just doing some meditation and communicating with my guides or my own spiritual team, which we would discuss the spirits that are around us, that are there to help us or whatever. And this strange energy came in and tried to communicate with me, and I mean, I would have known that there is negative entities and there is another side to it, to a certain extent. But, when you're doing these workshops and when all these new age people are selling this to you, and it is a business for most of them, they don't go into the dark end of things. They don't go into the demonic end of things. They just tell you, oh, if you ask for protection, your guides will make sure nothing bad gets in. And, they don't tell you the trouble that you can potentially get yourself into. So you assume that, because you're all love and light and you're only inviting nice spirits in, that nothing bad is going to happen. So when this spirit came in, initially I was just asked to leave because I didn't know who it was and I didn't really want to communicate with it. So this happened on 3 occasions over a period of maybe about a month or 6 weeks. And the third time that the entity, tried to communicate with me, I figured that there was some reason that this entity wanted to communicate with me. So I decided I would communicate with it. So the first form of communication was, I'm dead, and obviously, I was like, I kind of know that.
Yeah. Okay. Quick question. These communications that you had with this entity, like what form did that communication talk? Was it through a Ouija board, or was it like you just kind of heard him talking, or like writing? Like what kind of form did that communication take?
Well, I learned mediumship, and there's 3 different types of mediumship. There's mental mediumship, which is not hearing voices or seeing things that aren't there. It's done through thought form. So you get yourself kind of into a light meditative state, and you differentiate between the thought forms that are yours and the thought forms that are being put to you by spirit. So that's the basic form. And that was the first form of communication. Then you've got physical mediumship. And physical mediumship is like Ouija boards and seances, even without Ouija boards, where spirits move glasses or move things. That's physical mediumship. And then you've got trance mediumship. And trance mediumship is where you do have to go into a deeper state of meditation. And that's more for being able to feel energy and to feel what the spirit energy is doing. So the light meditative, like, your basic mental mediumship, which is what anybody who reads for another person really does. So yeah, to begin with, it was. So, I mean, a lot of people say, oh, you must have schizophrenia because you hear voices and you see things that aren't there. But you've got to remember that this is all done in the form of mediumship. This is not like I never heard a physical voice or I never seen a physical person in front of me. This is all done through meditation, so to speak. So
this guy, he's tried to contact you 3 times, and what happens after that?
So he said, I'm dead, and I was like, yes, I know that. So then I asked him to introduce himself or, to identify who he was. And the first thing he told me that he was Captain Jack Teague and that he was a pirate from the 1700s. So initially, my initial reaction was, yeah, right, no. This isn't real, like most logical people would, for the simple reason that when you do learn mediumship, you're never taught about really old spirits like that coming in. It's always just people who's passed on that or somebody that you're sitting with that knows. You never hear of really old spirits like that coming in. And then I suppose the other thing as well is that I was quite interested in the whole era of piracy and stuff like that because I was writing a book about it, a novel at the time. So I had done a lot of research. So I was like, either this is a spirit that's lying to me or this is my own mind. And, it's not actual spirit, the spiritual energy. So I put it off at that, and that was that. But this energy just kept coming back, over and over. And I suppose, after a few months, I just really said, well, look, I mean, he's really persistent. I'm going to start communication and see if I can
persistence pays off, right?
Well, yeah, I guess, at the time I thought of persistence. Now I see it maybe as, not respecting my boundaries. But
that's a good point. Yeah.
I didn't see it like that at the time because he did always come in very respectful and it didn't feel like this was a negative entity or anything like that,
He was minding his manners.
Mm-hmm. But then think about
that sounds like a player.
Way. If it is an abusive person that's pursuing you, they're not immediately going to show you their abusive face, are they? They show you their nice side.
Of course.
So I suppose when you really think about it sensibly, if it's a negative spirit, they're not going to appear to you like a demon, and because you're obviously not going to communicate with them. So a lot of these entities are very clever,
crafty.
Quick question, and I know that records were not, as good as they are now, but is there any kind of records or stories or folklore about a Jack Teague that was lived 300 years ago?
No, not as such. I mean, I found out a lot of details. I asked him about, his parentage, where he was born, where he died. And I mean, I did do my research to see could I find anything, but not only was he a pirate and he died, he was also a man of color. So back then, slavery was such a big thing.
Right.
He did die. He was just buried apparently communally with a lot of other people of color. So there really was. I mean, there was so little records of even people that were born to middle class or working class families, and people that were born on pirate ships or from slave mothers. Like really. They just, there was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I think that kind of finally did make me believe he was who he said he was is that he told me that his father was actually originally from Ireland and that his mother was Haitian, and she was pretty much a slave. So,
okay.
So he told me that obviously his surname is Teague, which is an Irish surname, so to speak. Not a very common one nowadays, but it is nevertheless, originally from Ireland. He told me if I went back in my family tree that I would find out that I had a Teague in my ancestry. So that was I could
very Alabama.
Yeah. So so I did just that, and I went back, and one of my great grandparents was in fact a Teague. So I didn't know that. So at that point, I was like, okay, I finally believe him, because how could he have known that? How could I have known that? So that's when I guess we really started to communicate. So, I mean, if you've got somebody from that long ago and you have a big interest in that period of time and you're writing a book about it, and you've got communication with somebody who actually lived in that time, you're like, wow, this is amazing. So, we just communicated a lot, and I guess after, another few months of communicating, I discovered that I kind of, I felt like I had developed feelings for this entity, which was really odd because I'd never heard of a spirit and a human having a relationship before. So, yeah, so it was something that I didn't particularly want, nor did I really tell anybody about it at this point or anything. I was like, this is, can I say a bad word? This is effed up, really.
Okay, sure.
I mistakes in my time, and I fell for like some bad people, but like this takes the biscuit,
Right.
The person is dead. They don't even have a pulse, so trust me to pick somebody like that. So,
yeah, I would imagine it would be difficult to take a 300-year-old spirit to meet your parents,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's usually awkward enough as it is.
It's kind of possible, really, at that point for this to even happen. So it was a couple of months later, it was in January of 2016, when he, you say that maybe, people that are very close can pick up empathically how the other person feels. He was the one who suggested to me, look, we can actually have a relationship. It is possible for spirits and physical people, to be together. And, I was quite taken back, first, that he even picked up on it, and second of all, that this could happen. So I was like, well, exactly how does that work?
Right. I have questions too.
So before I kind of agreed to anything, I went off and I did my research again. And in fact, this time more so than really, there wasn't a lot of research to be found on Google, apart from that it is practiced in voodoo. And his mother, obviously being from Haiti, voodoo would be a big religion over there. Right. So that kind of resonated a little bit. But I did speak to some of the people, that I had learned from and who I would have kind of considered mentors. And I was surprised to actually discover that most of them that I talked to actually knew about virtual physical connections. And, in fact, a couple of them had actually had intimate experiences with spirits before.
I know I'm going to regret this question, but I don't suppose there's a website for that, is there?
No, unfortunately, I wish that there had been more like out there, but really there wasn't. When you looked up spirit marriage or ghost marriage before me, the biggest hit you would get was like a nun. And now I think, if you type in spirit marriage, I'm probably the first hit you're going to get on
Yes. Absolutely.
Right. Yes.
But yeah, there wasn't a lot of information to gather on it, unless you lived in Haiti and you knew like a witch doctor or something like that, which obviously I didn't. So so I pretty much just kind of went on the advice of the people that, that I had done these workshops and stuff, to be honest, the people mostly, would have practiced witchcraft and stuff like that. Now, none of them had ever married a spirit, but they did claim to have had, an intimate experience or whatever, we'll say, with a spirit.
Okay.
So, so at that point, I was like, well, sure, you know what, I'll give it a go. Why not? And it's not something that just happened overnight again. It is kind of more trance mediumship kind of work, which I had not done before. And I did very much have to work very hard to try and learn, you know, how to get myself into that state of meditation. The best way, I mean, before you even ask, I know you're going to ask, how is it even possible? And I suppose the best way to kind of describe how it is possible is that, you know, at the very base level, you know, people would have gone into a haunted building or something like that, and they will say they feel a shiver up their spine, or they felt something touch them. That's feeling a spirit entity, you know, actually touch you. That's how you can feel it physically. If you step it up a bit, if you go to a medium, you know, if they're really good, they might be able to let you feel the spirit, you know, give you a hug or, you know, touch your face or something like that. So a lot of people will have maybe just felt it like to that level. But, you know, learning to actually have a spiritual experience, an intimate experience with a spirit, obviously, you know, you have to be able to feel that energy for a much prolonged period of time and not lose your concentration, or not, you know, not lose that connection, because it's very, very easy to lose that connection if you're not kind of in a deep trance-like state. So it took from January up until about May before we managed to be able to do anything intimately, shall we say, or for me to be able to at least feel anything.
Okay.
I dated my wife for a long time too, before anything happened.
And you also, it's hard to you can lose concentration there too if you're not careful.
Absolutely. It happens quite often.
I'm guessing this isn't anything like Demi Moore and Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost, right? Like, it's totally different.
Well, to be honest with you, I haven't actually seen the film, so I don't know.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah, you should watch it, because a lot of people have put up comments on some of the things. Oh, you know, Ghost or whatever. But you know what? I've actually never watched it. I did watch a film called The Ghost and Mrs. Moore, which is a really old movie. That's kind of, but I think it was before the period of time where they were allowed to be able to show anything of an intimate nature. So I don't really know.
Gotcha.
What you can actually see that movie. And just before anybody says anything, it was after Jack and I got married, so it wasn't before. That didn't influence my opinion, because I didn't even know. It was when I was kind of looking up things to do with spirit marriage. Yeah.
Well, so how did Jack pop the question? Like, you know, you're having these meditations and things are going good, and at some point the subject of marriage was brought up. How did that come about?
Well, it was more me than him, to be honest with you, because like, you know, I'm a bit old-fashioned in that sense. So I was like, well, if we're going to be doing the business, you know, well, I want to get married. I'm not just going to be like your little bit on the side, spirit or no.
Right.
Absolutely.
My wife was the same way.
If you like it, you better put a ring on it.
That's right.
So I just felt, you know, if this is what's going to be happening between us, then, you know, then it should, you know, there should be a commitment there. So it was me who really kind of said more that, you know, that I wanted to be married. Obviously in the Western side of the world, there has never really been anybody that married a spirit before. Again, if you go back to like voodoo in Haiti, it's pretty common actually in Haiti. But and it is actually legal in France to marry posthumously as well. But you know, over here, like, it has never been done before. So
right.
So didn't obviously again really know how we were going to do it. So I just really got the idea, I suppose, of doing it in the whole international waters thing. My daughter had just gone to Las Vegas and got married in Las Vegas, and she had just came back. And
now she married like a living person, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they got married by Elvis and all, like, but yeah. Yeah, so she had just came back from Las Vegas. So when they got back, all she really had to do was bring in her marriage certificate from Elvis, you know, and register herself as married, and that was it. It was as simple as that. So I kind of figured, look, I mean, if you can do that, why can't I just go abroad pretty much and get married and come back? You know, with the same thing. If I can find somebody who's legally allowed to marry me. Obviously, I didn't want to go to Haiti, so we looked into the whole thing of international waters. In international waters, pretty much, if you are abiding by the law and you're not breaking the law, and you have somebody that's legally allowed to do it, then you've technically got married abroad. And that was the easiest way to do it rather than going to some obscure country. Of course, I had to find a legal registrar, somebody who is legally allowed to perform marriages. So I pretty much looked up on the internet for anybody that was pagan that could officiate marriages. And at that time, there was only one person in Ireland who was. I think there's a couple now, but at that time, there was only one that was licensed to actually perform marriages who was, we'll say, of a pagan denomination, and he was a shaman. So I contacted him and I told him my story, and he again said that he had heard of it, and he said he was happy enough to do it. So we chartered the boat and we went out into international waters, out into the Atlantic Ocean, and we had the ceremony there, and he officiated it. He signed the documentation, came back and pretty much registered myself as married. Nobody ever asked me whether my husband was alive or dead. They just accepted the paperwork that I handed in, and that was that. Now, having said that, I mean, it's probably a grey area. Had I been questioned about the paperwork, I don't know whether or not the marriage could have been legally challenged, probably. But I was never questioned about it. Again, people say things like, do you claim tax benefits or stuff like that? For obviously, you're not going to do that, because then he would need his own national insurance number and all that kind of thing. So obviously, from that end of things, you're not going to go down that route, because that's technically fraud. But I mean, just literally change your identification, change your bank accounts, that sort of thing. All you really need is a marriage certificate. So it was really stuff pertaining to me and my surname more so than, anything to do with it.
Okay. The actual ceremony, how did that work? How did the guy officiate the wedding?
Well, we had two different ceremonies. The first one on the boat was pretty much just exactly what you would get in a registry office. I don't know what you call a registry office marriage in America, probably courthouse or whatever. So it was just much, very, 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 very basic, Now, obviously, it does take verbal consent on both sides. So we got a medium to channel Jack. Channeling is obviously where the spirit enters the person and speaks through them, which is physical mediumship.
Okay, so I know you haven't seen the movie, but if this was the movie Ghost, this would be like the Whoopi Goldberg, she's on the boat and she's channeling Jack.
Okay.
Is there a reason you went with another medium instead of you just doing it?
Yes, because the person who was performing the marriage, he was the one who actually organized the meeting, because it had to be for him to sign the legal paperwork. I couldn't give consent on the
right. So how can you prove she's not just saying yes?
Who didn't know me. So I didn't know the medium at that time at all. Just somebody that he picked.
Okay.
I guess, on the whole area of could somebody else speak for somebody else? Here, I don't know, but it's probably the same everywhere. So say, for example, if you wanted to get married in a Catholic church, if you've been divorced, you can't get married in a Catholic church. Whereas if you an Anglican church or a Protestant church will marry somebody who has been divorced. So pretty much the basis on what consent is when it's a religious officiant, they can pretty much accept, based on their religion, whether or not they will agree to marry you or not. As long as, of course, it falls into the remit of the law, and it's not, that you're not married to other people. So the fact that he was a pagan, he was a shaman, he accepts mediumship in his church setting. So therefore, once he was happy enough that the spirit was speaking through an independent medium, it was kind of his call on whether he believed that the spirit really gave consent or not, which obviously.
Was he ever married to anybody in life or maybe even in death? Were you the first person he was ever married to?
Did have relationships with two other people. He has told me, obviously he had relationships when he was alive, but he was never married.
Right.
He did have relations with two other people apparently in the prior 300 years since his death. But again, he wasn't married to either of them.
Okay.
Okay.
I was
Wow.
the only one who I guess wanted to get married.
Okay. Well, where did y'all go for y'all's honeymoon?
We didn't go very far. Actually, we went away for a couple of days, just to a nearby coastal place. Really, yeah. So nothing too exciting.
Okay.
Wedding cost too much, I think. Having to charter a boat to head out to the Atlantic Ocean and all that.
Right. Well, so you come back, and at some point, according to the news articles I've read, things were not so great. How did that happen?
Right. Well, then I suppose it actually all kind of started to go sour pretty quick, really. I was very healthy. I was never sick or anything, And then about 2 weeks after after 2 weeks after we got married, I started to develop all these like weird health issues. So within the space of 2 months, I'd gone from being like a really, really healthy person to like literally like being sick all the time. I was on antibiotics. I was in and out of the hospital, out of the emergency room. All these strange health issues just seemed to come on me. At this point, you're talking about this was probably around October or November. So we're not married long. We're only married about 3 months at this point. I do obviously know a little bit about possession and attachment and how, negative spirits can make you ill. So this was kind of raising a red flag with me, that my health had deteriorated so fast after getting married. And I went back to these, educated people in this area and I said to them, look, do you think there's something like not right here? Because like my health has gotten so bad. And they all said, no, we communicated with Jack. No, he's of the love and light. He would never harm you. He's not evil or demonic or anything like that. You're fine. You can't put everything down to spiritual, to a spiritual source. So I accepted that, and I was, you can't blame everything on the spirituality. Obviously I'm just having a bad run here with my health. So my health kind of reached kind of a point around the November where it wasn't great, but I was still able to function somewhat. But I mean, I was on antibiotics on and off, and as soon as I'd come off the antibiotics, I'd become sick again. So this went on for another year, pretty much. And the next red flag I got, I guess, was in December of 2017, and it was when my dog died. I had a rescue dog. I'm an animal activist, so I'm very involved in animal rescue and stuff like that. So I had this dog, and he was 17, and I knew he was going to die very soon. So I kind of said to Jack, when Toby dies, I want you to kind of keep him with you and look after him until it's my time, and then I'll be with him again. So we had kind of this agreement made. So when Toby died, Toby really didn't want to die, but it came to a point where he had terminal cancer, and I had to euthanize him, which was a terrible thing for me to have to do. But obviously, we talk about crossing people over, helping people to accept that they've died. So I tried to do that with Toby. But as soon as Toby and Jack's energy met, Toby did not want to go near him. He had a completely adverse reaction. So, I mean, a lot of people will say that animals are, can sense people that are good and bad. And, the fact that Toby was so unwilling to go anywhere near Jack's energy was another red flag to me, because I was like, something's not right here. This niggling feeling the whole time had gone on that something wasn't right. But,
now, was Toby cool with him when Toby was alive, and it was just when he died that he didn't like him around, or?
Well, when Toby was alive, I mean, Toby was completely blind when I got married to Jack. So Toby would have never really, seen his energy or so that Toby didn't really have any reaction to his energy at all when he was alive. Toby was very elderly. He had dementia. So I wouldn't have really noticed, to be honest with you, when he was alive, because all he really did ever was just lie there, get up and eat and go to the toilet, so he didn't, he wasn't a young active dog, that he would have seen energy or growled at energy or anything like that. So it wasn't really until he died that I kind of sensed this, that that something wasn't right, that Toby did not want to be on the same, well, say, vibration energy-wise as Jack.
Okay.
So I wasn't happy about that, and this was a really massive red flag to me. And I really was like, no, something's not right. So I said to Jack at this time, look, I want to break from this relationship. I'm not going to communicate with you or anything. I need space. I need to be away from you. So I cut off all communication with him. So during that period of time, my health started to really improve. And I came off my antibiotics and I didn't get sick again. However, it was actually at this point in time my story went viral.
Okay.
Me and Jack weren't even talking. Which is so
Was it Jack who went to the press?
Yeah, I think it was actually friends on my Facebook. But so yeah, I mean, so then that story went viral, and I was like, oh wow, what am I going to do now? We're not even talking. I don't even know if this is going to continue or not. But I guess at this point, you know, I did still love him, and I wanted this to work out. So I decided to communicate with him, and he told me this big story why Toby didn't want to come to him, and, you know, filled me up with a load of rubbish again, pretty much, you know. And he was like, Toby just wants to reincarnate straight away, and that's why he didn't want to come to me. He doesn't want to wait till you cross over. And I guess I just wanted to believe him. So I was like, yeah, you know what, you know, let's work it out. It's okay. Let's move on from it. So we did. As soon as Jack and I got back together, so to speak, my health started to decline again. And it just got worse and worse and worse. To the point.
So this was a situation where y'all broke it off, but then like started talking again, and then your health started getting bad again after that.
Exactly.
Oh wow.
But this time it reached an old point, and my health just got so bad that the infections I was getting, I ended up getting sepsis. And I ended up in hospital on the 2nd of June, and I almost died. I had to have like major emergency surgery.
Wow.
So, people that believe in spirit possession and stuff like that will probably have heard, you know, well, you probably will have heard how spirits can kind of attach their energy to objects and things like that, like say Annabelle the doll and stuff like that. So obviously my wedding ring, you know, would technically have his energy in it, you know, if you believe in such things. So I had to take my wedding ring off for the surgery. And when I took the wedding ring off, it was just like I just felt different. It was just like everything was really, really clear to me. So I didn't put the wedding ring back on after the surgery, nor did I start up communication with him again. So the longer I didn't communicate with him, the more I realized that, you know, that at this time, you know, the whole spiritual thing was draining my energy. I realized that this very much, you know, was contributing to my ill health.
Have you considered taking that wedding ring and casting it into the fires of Mount Doom?
Oh, wait, it's gone. It's gone now.
Okay.
It's gone. But, so I just said, right, okay, that's it. It's over. I want nothing more to do with spirituality. I'm just going to try and recover and get on with my life. And that was it. And I hoped that would be the end of it. And this was like last summer.
Okay.
However, the surgical wound that I had from the surgery just wouldn't heal. I mean, they tried everything and it just kept getting infected over and over and over again. It just would not heal. So several months later, in November, I had to get an MRI scan done to see what was going on, why it wouldn't heal. And they told me I had a fistula into my bowel. A fistula is like an abnormal tunnel or a perforation that kind of happened during surgery. And they told me that no way it was going to heal without more surgery, and that it would probably maybe end up with a colostomy bag. So I was really upset.
Sorry.
And why, you know, I mean, I've cut off communication with the spirit, and I haven't done any mediumship, so why am I still sick? Maybe it wasn't him at all. So at this point in time, out of all the people that I'd asked their opinion on, there was only one person who told me way back that they thought what I was doing was dangerous and that I was going to end up getting possessed. So I decided, I had a fight with them at this time, way back 2 years previous to this, and I had said, well, everybody else has said it's okay, so, you know, you're talking nonsense. So I decided to pick up the phone and ring this guy and just say, look, what did you mean about it being dangerous? Because, I do think that my ill health has something to do with spirit possession or attachment. So luckily enough, he did decide to talk to me, and he told me that, yes, he thought that I, at the very, very least, had an attachment, if not a possession. So he said, how you're going to know for sure whether or not this spirit is still attached to you, he goes, is that you are going to have to open up communication, and you're going to have to tell him that, that it's over, that you want him to leave, and that you don't give him permission to be anywhere near you anymore, that he needs to move on. And he said, if the spirit agrees to that, then, you don't have an issue. If the spirit reacts badly to this and refuses to leave, then, you've got something demonic or something nasty. So I was like, right, okay.
So there's no guarantees like he's going to take off, right?
Right.
No. Like if he's a negative spirit or demonic entity and you've made an agreement with him, which is pretty much what I did, then it's not going to leave that easily. You're its prey, pretty much. It's feeding off you. It's not going to just leave. So I did that. I opened up the communication, and I said, look, I know what's going on. I know what you are now, and I don't want you anywhere near me. I want you to leave. And of course, I seen the other side. He got really nasty, and he was like, no, because if you try and exercise me, if you get rid of me, I'm going to kill you. You're going to die. So yeah,
breakups are difficult.
Yeah.
So then I knew that, I was dealing with something that was like nasty, demonic, really, really evil. So I was like, what have I done?
Right.
And how am I going to get rid of this? So I went back to the guy who he's a demonologist. So he deals with this kind of thing, banishings and removals and stuff like that. So that's his kind of, that's his forte. So I went back and I was like, look, this is what happened. It's an evil thing, how am I going to get rid of it?
Now, is he Catholic or?
No, he would consider himself kind of like more pagan, but he's, I don't know. I don't think he really puts himself into a box. He deals with all kinds of religions and all kinds of things, so I don't really think he actually kind of has a particular denomination that he would identify with.
Man, if this was me, I think I'd be looking for, a Catholic priest at this point. I'd be scared to death.
But not if you lived in Ireland in the 80s,
Well, that makes sense. That's a good point.
In the Catholic Church, that's probably the last place you'd go.
Yeah, that's a good point. You'd have to sail out into international waters to get a Catholic priest.
I personally, I don't, I would have a belief in Christianity, definitely, but not in Catholicism. I think Catholicism is a very, very negative religion, to be honest with you. I feel there's there's been so much toxicity in it, that any good parts that have been taken from the gospel or whatever have been very much corrupted by power and the church. So I would have very little time for the Catholic Church, whereas Christianity in itself is fine in its purest form, but all these churches and what they've turned it into have, to me has turned it toxic. But that's another.
We're actually Protestants, so we're Southern Baptists, so we have some theological disagreements with the Catholic Church as well. But just from the horror movie standpoint, like when you get a demon, just
in all honesty,
call up Father Merrin or somebody.
That is just all Hollywood nonsense, really. So basically, I just said, look, this is something really evil. And I won't lie to you when he said, if you try and remove the spirit, when Jack had said to me, you're going to die. I was at a particularly low point. I've been ill for 7 or 8 months at this point. Really, really ill to the point that it was difficult for me to even go out.
Yeah, so he might not be bluffing. You're scared, right?
Yeah. But I kind of knew, look, if I don't get rid of this attachment, then I'm going to die anyway, because, my health has just gotten worse and worse and worse to the point that, I was so weak. So I was, if I don't get rid of it, I'm going to die anyway. So I might as well take my chances and try and get rid of it. So we arranged that this guy was going to come and do the exorcism, so to speak, on the 20th of December. He doesn't like to do things really quick, so he likes to spend time, communicating with his spiritual team and making sure that he knows what he's dealing with and that he knows that he has, the right spiritual energies around him to deal with it. And he also brings a couple of other people with him as well, in case things get nasty. So, the only experience I've ever had of an exorcism is what I've seen on TV. So I was very scared. But at the same time, I really, really wanted rid of this thing that was attached to me. Anyway, so we did it on the 20th of December, and it was very different from what I expected. It was similar in the way of the chanting and stuff like that, the way that they kind of go on, and, the putting out of hands and, telling the spirit to leave and all that kind of thing. So that was very, very similar. But I was surprised that in the end, Jack kind of didn't object that much. When divine energy or when God came in, and there was a more powerful energy there, he did leave without causing too much hassle. So, so we kind of think now that more than like a demonic entity was probably, actually a human spirit that did pass on, that we'll say was just kind of a pretty negative kind of person when he was alive. So he was more like, a negative entity rather than being demonic, because a demonic entity would have had more power than what he did, So the strange thing about the whole exorcism was by the time I was getting the exorcism, I wanted him gone. I really hated this entity that had caused me all this hassle. But when it was removed, it was like, wow, I felt this incredible loss. It was like something had been taken out of my body, and it was very overwhelming. But sadness rather than, wow, I'm so delighted this is gone. And, I was surprised how I felt after it. But the amazing thing about it is that I had this open wound for from June right through to the 20th of December that would not heal. As soon as the exorcism was over, within a month, it completely healed over without any further surgery, and I have had no issues with it since.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, people can turn around and say, well, that's a coincidence. And one of my daughters is an atheist, and she's the first to say, anytime I say it, she's going, well, it's a coincidence. But it's a bit of an odd coincidence. I'd been suffering with this issue for 2 years, literally 2 weeks after the wedding it started. And then it had reached a really bad point in the June. And then, literally immediately after the exorcism, it started to heal up, and I've had no more issues with it. So it's a bit of a strange coincidence. And whether a coincidence or no, I'm certainly not going to chance, getting myself into any kind of a situation like that again. So at that point, I just, I really did want to just kind of say I've given up all kinds of spiritual work. Obviously, I still have my own faith. I still believe in God. I still would pray and stuff like that, but see, communication with the dead, occult type stuff, Ouija boards, seances, all that kind of stuff. I just think, that you really are opening up a big can of worms. And, these people who do these kind of things, they don't warn you about the other end that can happen. They don't warn you that you can, even if you're careful, so to speak, that you can come across really nasty entities. So for me, it's just an absolute no-no. I would not tell anybody, you can or can't do something. I don't believe in that. But, I would say to people, if you are thinking about going down this route, just be really, really careful, and really think it through before you do. To me, the moral of the story is we're alive, we're having a physical existence. We're going to be dead long enough. If we want to talk to the dead, we'll have plenty time, when we pass on.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Can't argue that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know in our faith, the Old Testament specifically kind of, tells people to shy away from any kind of necromancy or any kind of dark arts like that. And I don't hear a lot of stories about somebody, playing with Ouija boards or whatever, and it turns out for good. It's usually a similar story where things just kind of, go negative. So that's certainly, like you said, I don't want to tell somebody else what to do, but that's certainly my opinion.
And to be honest with you, a lot of the stories that you don't hear about are probably people who do end up dying. And it's not that the spirit killed them. It's just that, these kind of energy and these kind of spirits around you make you ill. So technically the spirit doesn't kill you, but, the type of energy and the draining of your energy. Or other people, you hear a lot of people, that do this kind of thing and then end up with like really serious mental illness and stuff as well. So, I do think that it's not a safe thing to be doing. And again, there's no regulation in it. So pretty much anybody can become a medium. Anybody can do this kind of new age healing on you. Anybody can teach you how to read tarot cards. So there's no regulation at all. So, you've no idea what kind of spirituality these people are coming from,
Well, yeah. Also, how do you write like a standard for that,
They can be anybody, and as I said, it can be even just as simple as somebody is doing a reading for you and they're a negative person themselves and they work with negative spirits. And it can be as simple as just picking up a negative energy that way. You don't have to go to the extent of actually marrying one. Obviously, for me, I kind of, I made a contract with an evil spirit. So, for me, it was kind of worse. But, you don't have to go as far as marrying an evil spirit to just pick up something. You go to a medium, they've got nasty spirits around them. You open yourself up, you don't know what you're bringing home, and you can just end up starting to get ill health, bad luck. And, you don't even associate being with that one thing you did because going to a medium and having your cards read is harmless. That's what people think, but it's really not.
Well, now, let me ask you this. So, like, on paper, like, legally, are y'all still married, or did you have to get, like, a divorce in international waters? How does that work?
Well, you see, a divorce is a little bit different because here in Northern Ireland, to get a divorce, unless you're separated more than 5 years, you have to literally go to a court in front of a judge.
Okay.
So you might be able to get a pagan priest, to legally marry you. To find a pagan judge who's going to listen to a medium speaking on behalf of another entity, that's going to be that's not going to happen. So I kind of figured, I did discuss it obviously, with a couple of lawyers and a couple of people, and we kind of figured that the easiest thing for me to just say was to just declare myself as widowed, because technically I am. So,
yes, that's that you were a widow at the start.
Right.
Exactly. So all I have to do is just say, well, you know what, my husband's dead. Because he is. So that was the easiest way of just getting out of it, really, from a legal standpoint. So
you said you spoke with a lawyer. Like, had he ever heard of this before?
No.
He or she.
But he had heard of he obviously had to go look at it. In France there is a thing called posthumous marriage, so that's probably the country that's closest to us. So that's
okay.
That they do it. Well, say if you marry posthumously in France, and then you decide, oh, well, you know what, I don't want to be married to the dead person anymore because I want to marry a living person, then, that's the way that they would do it. They would just change it from being a marriage to being a widow or a widower. So, yeah, so that's pretty much, we kind of pretty much used the same basis on what they would do in France.
Okay.
So...
But now I'm guessing being a widow, like Jack's not on the hook for any kind of alimony or anything, right?
No, well, what I've been told is, that when he was removed from me, obviously, we're talking about like divine energy. We're talking about God being called in here, where, when people cross over, when you do cross over, people do kind of tend to stay in the earthbound realm for a little while, for several different reasons, but then ultimately you're supposed to move on. You're not supposed to stay around for 300 years, as a ghost. That's not what we're meant to do. So you're meant to cross over and you're meant to, either, go to a higher realm or a lower realm, or I would believe in, reincarnation in certain cases. So we'll say he's been crossed over to, to where he needs to be. I know it's the lower realm, you might call it hell or whatever, I don't use that particular term, but, you know, that's where he was brought, was to, you know, the lower realms. So he's not coming back from wherever he's gone. So he's not going to bother me or anything else again. He has been, you know, taken. So.
Okay.
And, you know, I didn't want to know, because I'm like, you know what it is? Whatever he did in his physical life, whatever he's done in his afterlife, whatever price he has to pay for that, that's on him. I can't take the guilt of that. I mean, it's not a nice thought to think that, you know, you're responsible for maybe somebody being brought to hell. You know, you don't want that on your conscience, really. But ultimately, the only way I could look at it was, you know, look, you know, I'm not responsible for decisions that he made, things that he did while he was alive, you know, and if he's got to pay for whatever he did now, that's not on me. So, I mean, that's the only way that I could, like, kind of, you know, not feel guilty about it.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So do we ever, I mean, I know that, you know, we were kind of, I guess, just taking it on faith that this guy was a pirate, but I guess we really didn't ever really know that for sure, right? Like, he could just be like a old bald dude that, you know, died at some point, right?
That was one of the things that I asked the guy who did perform the exorcism. I did ask, you know, I mean, do you really think, like, obviously he would have, you know, connected with him during the exorcism. Do you think he was a pirate? Do you think he was a demon? You know, do you think he was just somebody that died 50 years ago? What did you pick up from him when you were removing him? And he said he did feel that he was a pirate, and he did feel that, you know, he wasn't a demon, but he was somebody that, you know, had a particularly, like, low vibration, or, you know, wasn't a terribly nice person when they were alive, which would kind of make sense, you know, when you think about it. I mean, you know, pirates generally weren't very nice people. So,
right.
You know, so yeah, probably not a great choice to begin with, you know, but yeah, he did say that that's what he felt. He did feel that he had been around a long time, just kind of preying on people and, you know, just being a general nuisance. He just really didn't want to
just
accept
being a jerk.
And I think there was you know, what he did say to me as well is that there was a certain amount of fear there of crossing over, because he did fear judgment over what he'd done in his life, and that's why he didn't kind of want to cross over, because he didn't want to face judgment.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're glad that you're healthy now, and we hope everything's going well.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said, you know, I mean, I didn't, even after the exorcism, I wasn't even expecting that my health would get as good as what it is. I mean, I have been left with long-term complications from the sepsis, and I mean, that's, you know, that are unfixable, you know. But to get back to the quality of life I have now, to be able to, like, have my old life back is, you know, is amazing. And it's taken a few months to get there, and I wouldn't say I'm even fully there yet, but definitely getting back on track. And I suppose the other thing as well is that, you know, I've just realized that, I mean, a lot of people who get sepsis don't survive. I think it's like 57% or 53% of people who get sepsis actually die. So even though I have been left with some complications, I mean, it could be worse. You know, I may not have survived it at all. And, you know, I look back now on the time that I was with Jack. I mean, even look at my wedding video, you know, not very often, but I have looked at it a couple of times. And I see now so many things that I didn't notice. I mean, how much my personality changed. I mean, he really wanted me. He wanted me to work with spirituality all the time. He wanted me to give up my actual job. He wanted me to just draw me more and more and more into this whole area, and remove me more and more from reality, I guess, you know. And you know, and I guess, you know, just taking my life back and saying, well, you know, this is actually my physical life, and, you know, I'm going to go back to doing the job that I loved, and, you know, and turning my back on all of that. I do think that they were all very positive steps. So, yeah, so there you go. That's the full portion, pretty much.
So if you were going to sum everything that you've set up into just, like, I guess, one bullet point for the audience, it would be, I guess, just like, don't date ghosts, or
I would be just like, you know what, just, you know, I know it can be hard when somebody that you love dies, you know, and I know it can be very, very tempting to kind of get into that whole area. But you know what? Your loved ones, they are there, they will be around you. They're going to be okay. You don't need to open yourself up to that kind of thing, just to get that proof. Just have faith that they are okay and that they are around and watching over you. They wouldn't want you to put yourself in danger by getting involved with that kind of thing, And unfortunately, it is a lot of people who have lost loved ones that do end up going down that road because that's how you're lured into it.
Okay. Now, so are you like officially back on the market for single, real people, real men or women?
Well, I'm definitely never going to be another spirit anyway. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah.
At the minute, I'm just really concentrating on getting my life back together. And, we live in a society where you're very much put in a position like you need to have this plus one, and if you don't have plus one, there's something missing out of your life. But when you've gone to such an extreme and you've ended up marrying a ghost, just to kind of, feel like that you were married and that, it was somewhat acceptable in society, because like now I'm married sort of thing, it makes you kind of realize, look, I've been through a horrible experience, if I'm on my own, and I'm happy and I'm getting my life back in track, then it's okay. It's fine. And if the right person comes along, then great. But, I'm not going to go out looking for it, I mean, if it happens, it happens.
You don't need that plus one to be happy in life.
Right. No. But if Johnny Depp knocks on your door tomorrow, you haven't written it all off.
I'd be like, no, you're too much like a pirate. Go away.
I got you.
No, definitely not. Yeah, it would have to be somebody that I think was, a safe choice,
Yes, right. Like an accountant or something.
That was, that was wholesome, shall we say, I definitely, I'm really conscious now of how the people around us, I mean, even all the spiritual friends that I had, I've kind of, I've cut off all that circle of people because even the friends and the people you have around you affects your energy. You should have people that are good for you around you, people that are positive. So yeah, I cut a lot of people out of my life.
I was told in youth group that it's a lot easier for your friends to pull you down than for you to pull them up. So.
That's right.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, even just having people around you that are that are doing things that, that you don't want to be involved in, it is bringing it, to your door. So that's why I'm like, anybody in my friend circle that, that was dealing in any of that kind of spirituality, I'm just like, no, I just don't want that kind of, I just don't want that energy around me. So, yeah. But, once I kind of gave up the spirituality, you'd be surprised, they kind of all distanced themselves anyway, they kind of all just kind of went off and did their own thing, I guess, I wasn't a meal ticket anymore once I kind of, started to expose what's going on. So, yes, so that's where we're at.
Well, I hope everything goes well for you, and I'm glad.
Unfortunately, as a woman who married the pirate ghost, and it is hard, moving back into, a career and moving back into a life where you want to be taken seriously and you don't want to be just seen as the woman who married the pirate ghost and having to defend what you did all the time and try and prove to people that you're not insane. But yeah, I'm getting there.
Let me ask you this. You said that you were writing a book at one time. Did you ever finish that? Is that out? Would you like to plug it?
Yes, I did. It was a novel, and I did finish that. But then I did write my autobiography, which is actually like the true version of what happened and how I ended up marrying Spirit and what happened. And that is available on Amazon. That is only out a couple of months. So it's called A New Attitude.
Okay.
It's Amanda Sparrow, large Teague. So that is...
Okay. All right.
That's the factual version. So, pretty much everything that I've said and obviously going into a bit more detail, about, what happened. Yeah, that's all in there. That's a factual book.
Okay.
Well, great.
Well, we thank you so much for joining us, and it'll probably take me a while to edit this, but I'll definitely send you a message when it's going to come out. And thank you so much for donating your time to sit down and tell us the story, because this is way outside of our experience, and it was very interesting to hear you tell your story, and very enlightening. Thank you so much.
Tell the story, because I mean, people just see a headline in a newspaper and they see a couple of paragraphs, and it's very easy to just dismiss it and just say, that's a joke, or that's a load of nonsense. But, to actually get an opportunity to actually talk about it in depth, and when people, hear the whole story, they're like, maybe it's not as crazy, because, I mean, if you do believe in God and you do believe in another realm, so if you do believe in spirits, because, God, angels, saints, whatever, they're obviously not alive. They are spirit energies. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you do believe in that, then, it's not so hard to believe, and as you said it, I mean, it even says it in the Bible that there is another side. There are, just the same as there's like divine energy and good energy, there's also the other end, there's the evil spirits as well. So, I mean, people nowadays kind of don't really talk about them much, but they're there, they are there.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much, and I'll send you a message as soon as this is done. So.
Well, listen, thanks for having me.
Oh no, thank you.
Yeah, it was lovely talking to you. Also,
I love your accent.
I was about to say lovely accent. So,
thank you.
If you ever come to Alabama, look us up.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you very much. Take care.
All right, you too. All right, bye.
Bye.
Whoa, pretty scary story, huh? All right, show of hands, honestly, how many out there in the listening audience maybe pee-peed their pants just a little bit, huh? Come on, be honest. Dude in the flannel shirt and skinny jeans. I suppose you just spilled water on your pants when you went to the bathroom. Likely story. No, I'm just kidding. I guess maybe it wasn't super duper scary, but not a bad ghost story for the month of October. And think about this. She didn't even have to meet her 300-year-old ghost pirate mother-in-law. Think of how horrifying that would have been. Well, what do y'all think happened? Do you think this was all just a coincidence? Do you think this was just in her head? Or do you think maybe, just maybe, Miss Amanda Sparrow Large fell under the oppression from a 300-year-old ghost pirate, or maybe even a
demonic entity?
I don't know. I mean, I've got my own personal biases, but what I do know is that she's not getting any alimony out of this. So if you would like to buy her book, either one of her books, there will be links in the show notes. So if you're interested, don't hesitate to go buy her book. Well, that's our show, everybody. Happy Fall Festival. You have been listening to Earth Oddity Podcast, and we thank you so much for listening to us no matter where you get us, whether you get us on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify. We're on them all. If you would like to email us, you can get us at earthoddity@planetmail.net. If you would like to tweet at us, you can get us on Twitter. We are @_Earth Oddity. Do you like to look at pictures? Because sometimes we post pictures. You can look at those pictures _Earth Oddity on Instagram. And if all that fails, we have a phone number, which is 662-493-2059. Call now and tell us a ghost story. Tell us about your own personal interactions with the paranormal. We hope everyone out there has an excellent week. Earth Oddity for the Fringe Radio Network signing off. I love y'all too, not just John. Bye.
This has been a very odd production. Thanks for listening.